It was raining that morning when Clara stepped out of the bus, clutching a soaked envelope in her trembling hands. Her shoes squelched against the marble floor as she entered the glass tower that rose above the city like a fortress of power and wealth. The security guard's eyes flicked over her cheap dress, the wet hem of her skirt, and the determined, nervous set of her lips. She had come here with one mission, to repay her late father's debt, the one that had stolen his peace, and hers. She was not the kind of woman people turned to look at twice. At least, that's what she had been told all her life. Too big, her classmates had whispered in school. Too plain, her ex-boyfriend had said when he left her for someone thinner. But none of that mattered today. Her father had worked for years under a company named Crestfall Industries, and the man who owned it, Damon Hale, was now her final obstacle to redemption. If you believe that love, kindness, and compassion can ripple through even the coldest hearts, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Ripple of Love. Your support helps stories like Clara's reach more hearts. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt endless. Each second stretched, echoing with her heartbeat. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world so polished and perfect it made her self-conscious just to breathe. The air smelled faintly of cedar and luxury. The receptionist led her to a heavy wooden door at the end of a long corridor. Behind it was the man who held her father's fate, or what was left of it. When Damon Hale looked up from his desk, she almost forgot how to speak. He was not what she had imagined. Sharp features, eyes the color of storms, and an aura of control that filled the room. Everything about him spoke of precision, the kind of man who measured success in dollars and time, not in heartbeats or tears. Clara took a deep breath and stepped forward. She placed the envelope on his desk. It contained every penny she had saved over 3 years working double shifts at a bakery. "This is to pay my father's debt," she said quietly. "Please mark it settled." Damon leaned back in his chair, studying her. He didn't touch the envelope. His gaze moved from her tired eyes to her calloused hands, then to the letter that had clearly been refolded 100 times. Finally, he said, "You came all this way to pay off a dead man's debt." "Yes," she whispered. It's what he would have wanted. He didn't respond for a moment. The silence in that room was heavy, almost suffocating. Then, slowly, he pushed the envelope back toward her. "You owe me nothing," he said. "But you will join me for dinner tonight." Clara blinked in confusion. "Dinner," she repeated, unsure if she'd heard correctly. "Dinner," he said simply. "That's all I ask." She didn't know whether to be relieved or frightened. Why would a man like him, a billionaire CEO, surrounded by women who probably sparkled like diamonds, ask her, of all people, to dinner? But the sincerity in his voice left no room for refusal. That evening, she sat across from him in a restaurant that overlooked the city skyline. The tablecloth was crisp white, the candles glowed softly, and the aroma of rosemary and garlic filled the air. She felt out of place, sitting there in her old lavender blouse and second-hand skirt. But Damon didn't seem to notice. He asked her about her father, about his life, his dreams, and the kind of man he was before life broke him. As she spoke, her walls began to crumble. She told him about her father's laughter, his small bookstore that had gone bankrupt, and the night he died with guilt still clouding his eyes. "He wasn't a bad man," she said, her voice trembling. "He just trusted the wrong people." For the first time, Damon's cold composure softened. He looked at her, not as a debtor's daughter, but as a woman carrying too much pain in her heart. Days turned into weeks. Their dinner turned into many more, some spontaneous, others planned. Each time, Damon seemed less like the powerful CEO and more like a man rediscovering what it meant to feel again. He learned that Clara loved baking, that she dreamed of opening her own cafe one day. He listened to her stories, her insecurities, her laughter. And Clara, though she tried not to admit it, found herself drawn to him in ways she couldn't understand. She had never been admired before, never seen as beautiful, never valued beyond what she could do for others. But Damon's gaze made her feel visible. It scared her, because she had spent her life believing that love was something meant for other people, not her. Yet one evening, as they stood by the glass wall in his office watching the rain, Damon said quietly, "Do you know why I asked you for dinner instead of money?" She looked up, confused. He continued, "Your father once saved my company. When we were on the brink of collapse, he refused to leak a deal to our competitors, even when they offered him more than he'd earn in a year. He said loyalty mattered more. I never got to thank him before he died." Tears welled up in her eyes. "So you forgave his debt because of that?" He shook his head. I forgave it because of you. Because I saw in your eyes the same honesty I saw in his. And because, his voice broke for a second. Because I didn't realize how empty my world was until you walked into it. She turned away, overwhelmed. Part of her wanted to believe him, but another part screamed that this was impossible. You don't mean that, she said. You don't know what you're saying. But Damon stepped closer, his voice steady now. I've never been more certain. You came here thinking you owed me something. But you've already given me what I didn't know I was missing, peace. After that night, everything changed. He began showing up at her bakery early in the mornings before work, tasting her pastries, pretending to criticize them while secretly falling in love with her laugh. He sent her small notes on napkins, your smile is dangerous for my meetings, and she would blush so hard her coworkers teased her endlessly. Still, Clara struggled with doubt. She wasn't the kind of woman who belonged in his world. The tabloids whispered cruelly when they were first seen together, the CEO and the baker girl. Some called her names, mocked her body, questioned his intentions. She tried to ignore it, but one day she saw a photo online, a glamorous model, one of Damon's exes, arm in arm with him at a charity gala. The caption read, "Back where he belongs." Her heart shattered. That night, she didn't answer his calls. The next morning, she left a note at his office, "Thank you for everything. But I don't fit into your world." When Damon found the letter, he didn't waste a second. He drove through the rain, searching for her. He found her outside her bakery, locking the door with trembling hands. She looked up, startled, as his car pulled over. He stepped out, soaked, his expensive suit clinging to him. "You think you don't fit in my world," he said, his voice breaking. "Clara, you are my world." She tried to speak, but tears silenced her. Damon took her hands, pressing them against his chest. "You taught me what real worth means, not in numbers or appearances, but in heart. I don't care what anyone says. I love you, just the way you are." The rain kept falling, washing away the fear that had caged her heart for so long. She finally whispered, "I was so afraid you'd regret me." He smiled softly. "You're the only thing I'll never regret." In the months that followed, they built a quiet life together, one not made of luxury, but of warmth. Damon helped her open her dream cafe, Clara's Corner, where every pastry carried a story of hope and healing. Sometimes, people who walked in didn't know who the man wiping tables beside her was, the billionaire who chose love over legacy. And every evening, as they closed the cafe, Damon would repeat the words that had changed both their lives. "You owe me nothing, Clara, except dinner together." 3 years later, the aroma of freshly baked croissants and vanilla cream drifted through the streets every morning from a little cafe at the corner of Rosewood Lane. Its wooden sign read Clara's Corner in elegant script, and beneath it, a simple line was etched, "You owe me nothing, except a smile." The cafe had become more than just a place to eat. It was a haven, for the lonely, the lost, and the dreamers. Students came there to study, old couples came to reminisce, and young mothers found comfort in the smell of sugar and hope. And every morning, before the cafe opened, Damon and Clara would sit together by the window, watching the sunrise spill its light across the city. Damon still wore his suits, but his expression had changed. The once cold, distant CEO now laughed easily, the weight of his old world gone. He still worked, yes, but only enough to keep their life comfortable. The rest of his energy, he poured into the cafe and into Clara's dream. Clara, on the other hand, had bloomed. The shy, uncertain girl who once trembled before a CEO now stood confidently behind her counter, greeting every customer by name. Her hands, once rough from long hours at the bakery, now moved gracefully as she decorated pastries, her wedding ring catching the morning light. Every photograph of her and Damon told a story of quiet, steadfast love. There was no fairy tale glamour, no luxury jets or grand mansions. But there was warmth, laughter, shared glances, and flour dusted across both their faces on lazy Sunday mornings. One day, as the rain tapped gently against the window, the same way it had the day they met, Clara saw a young woman standing outside the cafe. She was drenched, clutching a small brown envelope close to her chest. Something about her eyes, the fear, the hesitation, struck a chord deep within Clara. She rushed to open the door. "Come inside, sweetheart," she said, guiding the girl in. "You're soaked." The girl's lips trembled. "I came to pay my mother's debt," she whispered, placing the envelope on the counter. For a long moment, Clara said nothing. Her heart clenched as she remembered standing in that glass tower, shaking, small, and terrified, just like this girl. She placed her hand gently over the envelope and smiled. "You owe me nothing," she said softly. "Just have dinner here tonight. With us." The girl looked up in surprise, and for the first time, smiled through her tears. That evening, as Damon joined them and laughter filled the cafe, Clara realized something beautiful. What had begun as an act of debt had turned into a chain of kindness, a ripple of love that kept spreading, one heart at a time. Sometimes, customers would ask Damon why such a powerful man chose to live such a simple life. He would just smile and look at Clara, saying, "Because I already have everything I'll ever need right here." Late one evening, after closing the cafe, Clara stood at the door, watching the streetlights shimmer in the rain. She thought about her father, how guilt had weighed him down, and she whispered into the quiet, "I kept your promise, Papa. I turned your debt into something beautiful." Damon came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured. "About how love doesn't ask for payment," she said softly. "It just asks to be shared." He kissed her forehead. "And you've shared it with everyone who walks through that door." As the rain fell outside, the light from their cafe glowed warm and golden, spilling onto the wet pavement like a beacon in the dark. And somewhere in the world, a stranger passing by might have looked through that window and thought, maybe love like that still exists. If this story made your heart feel a little warmer, if it reminded you that compassion can change lives, please like, share, and subscribe to Ripple of Love. Every click, every comment, every share helps spread kindness a little further. Speech balloon before you leave, tell us in the comments, have you ever done, or received, an act of love that changed your life forever? Your story might inspire someone who needs hope tonight. Because in the end, we all owe each other the same simple thing, a little love, shared over dinner, and a heart that still believes in good.